Albert went live and revealed something unexpected just when fans thought they had heard everything. He revealed the true cause of D'Angelo's startling absence in a heartfelt moment. And supporters were completely stunned by what he stated. Was it industry secrets, betrayal, or something far more sinister? Stay with me because everything we believe to be true regarding D'Angelo's demise is altered by what Al B. Sure disclosed during that live webcast. And believe me, the reality is far more perverse than anyone could have ever guessed. You already know that something about the R&B legend D'Angelo's abrupt, quiet, and unexplained disappearance doesn't add up if you've been following the alarming updates surrounding him. The question of what truly happened to the guy whose voice defined a whole era of soul music has been plaguing fans for years. However, the business was rocked by Ali Shore's remarks when he just went live. He wasn't merely a fellow artist. He spoke as someone who had first-hand knowledge of D'Angelo and had witnessed what went on behind the scenes. We're delving deeply into that live session in this video. Every assertion, every cryptic hint, and the actual explanation why D'Angelo was pushed into the background are all true. The names that surface and the information that was purportedly withheld for years will astound you. We'll dissect Al B. Sure's specific remarks, the reactions of fans, and the unexpected links between D'Angelo's personal hardships, the pressures of the music business, and the sinister secrets that might have contributed to his demise. This isn't just another celebrity rumor, so pay attention. One of the most illuminating events in R&B history may be this. You'll see why so many people think Albore may have finally taken a chance to speak the truth by the end of this video. Please remember to hit the subscribe button, enable your notifications, and leave a comment below before we go into the complete story. Let's examine the actual events of the night Albore made the decision to reveal everything. We must return to the starting point before we can uncover what Al B. Sure revealed. That's when D'Angelo transcended his role as a vocalist, isn't it? He turned into a representation. D'Angelo wasn't simply at the top of the charts in the mid to late 1990s. He was permanently altering R&B's sound. His voice possessed the soulfulness of Prince, the smoothness of Marvin Gaye, and the genuineness of soul that had long been lacking from popular culture. He not only gained admirers but also gained credibility with his first album, Brown Sugar. He was dubbed the R&B of the future by critics. Women loved him. His talent was recognized by men. He had it all: vulnerability, voice, and vision. However, beneath that confident exterior and beautiful voice was a man who was genuinely uneasy with the persona that fame was giving him. He was to be the new sex icon, according to the label. The fans expected perfection, and the media wanted controversy. Every action he took was closely watched. Every error was emphasized, and every lyric was examined. Then came Voodoo, the record that both established him as a legend and marked the start of his decline. D'Angelo became an international sensation because to the now famous music video for untitled How Does It Feel. However, insiders claim that it also imprisoned him. All of a sudden, his reputation extended beyond his voice. That change supposedly tore him apart on the inside. He was well known for his body, his image, and his sexuality. D'Angelo's friends claim that the continual sexualization and pressure to uphold a particular image crushed his soul. Instead of being objectified, he wanted to create music. The industry machine, however, didn't give a damn. Dollar signs were all they could see. And this was the beginning of the downward spiral. D'Angelo started avoiding public appearances behind the scenes. He ceased doing interviews. He began to distrust record labels and even some of his neighbors. It appeared to the public that he was just being withdrawn. However, Al B. Sure's latest disclosures indicated that something considerably darker was taking place. Because Al B. Sure alluded to manipulation in his live, rather than merely exhaustion or creative discontent, he asserted that influential people in the field not only took advantage of D'Angelo, but also managed him. And things started to fall apart when he started to fight back. Let's examine what truly drove D'Angelo over the edge before delving into what Al B. Sure disclosed regarding those dominating forces. the point at which his celebrity turned into his captivity. Fans anticipated that D'Angelo would rule the R&B scene for decades following Voodoo's meteoric popularity. Instead, he disappeared. No new music, no interviews, no tours. He seemed to have vanished into thin air. The stillness was filled with rumors for years. He was battling addiction, according to others. Others asserted that he was bound by a poisonous industry contract. Then there were rumors that D'Angelo's refusal to play the game was the reason behind the failure of those in positions of authority. Rumors that nobody cared to voice too loudly. His soul was at war throughout that period, according to those close to him. D'Angelo struggled to balance his desire to be an artist with the persona that other people expected him to uphold. He had stated in interviews prior to his disappearance, "I don't want to be seen as an object. I want to be heard as a man." However, those statements didn't align with the goals of those in charge of his career. Later, industry insiders disclosed that D'Angelo had started to turn down the creative requests of label executives. According to reports, he turned down offers that would have made him more commercial but also diminished his genuineness, and he refused to take part in several advertising efforts. There was a silent cost to that resistance. Powerful people in the company began interrupting him behind closed doors. Promoters withdrew. Collaborations ceased to exist. Even his closest supporters became aloof. D'Angelo was being removed from the spotlight, not merely drifting away from it. Then there was the actual and emotional crash. It was reported that D'Angelo had been involved in a serious car accident in the early 2000s. According to reports, he was intoxicated. However, others who knew him claim that negligence wasn't the only factor in that collision. It was an expression of intense suffering. He was alone, exhausted, and surrounded by people who didn't care about him. D'Angelo then backed off nearly entirely. He ceased making public appearances and completely stopped corresponding with many influential people in the industry. The once vibrant performer, who had revolutionized R&B, appeared to disappear into thin air, and until Albisher stood forward, no one had any answers for years. Because Albisher didn't sound like a disinterested bystander or a gossip blogger when he went live, he had the inside scoop when he talked. He discussed control, manipulation, and the potential that D'Angelo's silence wasn't given voluntarily. Albisher believes that what the world perceived as a vanishing may have actually been a silencing, which is considerably more sinister. He made hints that D'Angelo's difficulties were not just personal issues but were well-planned actions by those who didn't want him to talk about what he had seen in the business. Albisher made statements that astounded the audience, subliminal allusions to contracts, money, and even threats. Although he never explicitly mentioned names, the message was obvious. It's possible that D'Angelo saw or knew something that he shouldn't have. The plot takes a terrifying turn at this point. Albisher did not merely describe D'Angelo as a victim of celebrity, he suggested that he was being deliberately silenced by forces that had similarly treated previous artists who had the audacity to challenge the system. What specifically did Albisher disclose in that live video that caused both insiders and fans to pause? What mystery did he allude to that would account for D'Angelo's protracted quiet and abrupt withdrawal from public life? Fans assumed that Albisher's live performance would be just another nostalgic gathering, complete with old-timey tales, giggles, and recollections. However, in a few minutes, the tone changed. His tone became solemn. The entire live energy grew tense, weighty, and dramatic as his countenance shifted. He began by stating, "People are often asking what happened to D, but they aren't really interested in knowing, since the truth will make everything fall apart." The audience understood something significant was about to happen right away. He wasn't only thinking back, he was cautioning. He started discussing the negative aspects of the music business, such as how certain musicians were singled out for abuse when they disobeyed orders and how fame might be used against you. Then he uttered the name that stopped everyone cold: D'Angelo. Albisher asserts that D'Angelo was fighting more than just his own demons. He was opposing a system that used contracts, image manipulation, and silence to control artists. Fans in the live chat started to remark in shock after he added, "When you don't go along with their narrative, they make sure your career never sees the light again." Some pleaded with him to elaborate. It was electric, nervous, and scary all at once as others scribbled words like, "Be careful," Al, and don't say too much. He continued by explaining how D'Angelo posed a threat to those in positions of authority because he refused to fit in and continued to create music that sold rather than in music that healed. He talked about D'Angelo's growing vocalization of his desire for authenticity, freedom, and ownership. That's when the walls started to close in, Al says. Then came the moment that took everyone by surprise. It was implied by Alisher that D'Angelo's seclusion was not totally voluntary. He claimed that because he had begun asking questions that unnerved some executives, there were personnel who made sure he remained hidden. Inquiries concerning agreements, unreported royalties, and covert transactions that favored all parties but the artist. Al's voice became tearful as he stated, "They call a brother unstable when he wants the truth, difficult when he wants independence, and abruptly he vanishes when he doesn't kneel down." He didn't stop there. Fans started to piece together clues from his words, connecting them to well-known figures in the music industry, even though he refrained from directly naming anyone. He mentioned meetings that never should have taken place, as well as people who smiled in Day's face but worked against him behind closed doors. D'Angelo wanted to start his own label, establish his own platform, and assist young artists in safeguarding their art. Albor stressed throughout the performance, saying he was one of the few who wanted to reveal how black artists were being mistreated, underpaid, and controlled by corporate systems that took advantage of their talent while shattering their spirit. But everything around him began to fall apart when those plans came to light. Then, after a solemn pause, Al revealed something that left admirers stunned. You ever wonder why some of the real ones vanish right when they're about to speak their truth? It's never an accident. The comment section exploded. Al looked straight at the camera for a moment before saying, "I probably said too much already, but I can't stay silent anymore." Thousands of viewers started to speculate. Was Al implying that D'Angelo's disappearance was about something darker, something planned? D didn't fall off. The truth must be heard. After they made sure he disappeared, videos of that livestream quickly went viral on social media, and fans started searching through D'Angelo's previous interviews, lyrics, and videos for evidence to back up what Al had said. Oddly enough, some of those hints were in plain sight. The internet exploded when Albor ended that live. Within minutes, clips were making the rounds on TikTok, X, formerly Twitter, and Instagram. Blogs reposted his words with dramatic headlines, and fans flocked to comment sections, demanding answers. However, the industry's response was completely different from that of the fans. For a few days, it was almost as if the live event had never taken place. It was quiet, cold, and calculated, and at first it seemed like no major outlet wanted to touch the story. Normally, mainstream entertainment platforms would jump at any celebrity controversy, but instead, they remained silent. In the background, however, the silence was louder than any headline ever could be. Then, backlash started, with some industry insiders making subtle online moves. Articles labeling Al's statements as unverified, comments dismissing his claims, and anonymous sources claiming that he was simply emotional or misinformed. It was a well-worn tactic. When artists like Lauryn Hill, Prince, and even Michael Jackson attempted to speak out against corruption in the industry, they were suddenly portrayed as unpredictable, unstable, or challenging. The system worked over time to discredit anyone who spoke too much truth, but fans weren't buying it because they had witnessed this pattern too often. Therefore, when Albor started to receive similar treatment, it only made people think that he might be telling the truth. However, behind the scenes, something even more disturbing began to occur. People who had previously publicly associated with Alishkar suddenly stopped talking to him, and collaborators who frequently shared his content on social media stopped interacting. After that, he didn't say much, but those who followed him closely saw that his posts became more cryptic, sharing quotes about truth, loyalty, and betrayal, almost as if he wanted to speak without saying too much. A few close friends also claimed that Al himself started getting warnings too. Leave it alone. A few weeks later, he briefly vanished from social media completely. While fans were re-watching old interviews, they noticed how cautious D'Angelo had been when discussing fame in the industry. In one clip that resurfaced, D'Angelo stated, "It's not the music that breaks you, it's what comes with it." Fans started to worry that he might be under pressure behind the scenes. After Al's revelations, that quote took on a whole new meaning. As fan theories proliferated, people started making connections between seemingly unrelated information. Why did D'Angelo vanish just as he was rising to prominence in his generation? Why did so many journalists at the time refrain from investigating his disappearance? How did a man so gifted and well-respected simply vanish without any genuine explanation from his label or management? A few journalists who dared to write about the situation recalled that it was almost impossible to obtain information about D'Angelo. One writer even said that whenever they called label executives for comment, the calls were not returned. It was as if a wall of silence had been erected around his story, and Albasher was attempting to break through that wall. However, there are repercussions for speaking the truth in a secret-based industry. People began publicly warning Al, with fans cautioning him and others pleading with him to defend himself. Some ordinary people said they had witnessed similar silencing in the past, citing instances where other artists who spoke out faced threats to their careers, legal action, or worse. Albasher's live rekindled public interest in D'Angelo, resulting in a renewed interest in his legacy and his mysterious withdrawal from fame. Despite the backlash, the spark he ignited could not be extinguished, and independent journalists, podcasters, and YouTubers started to pick up the story, delving deeper into old interviews, contracts, and timelines. Here's where it gets weird though. As the discussion grew, some videos and posts that addressed Albasher's claims started to mysteriously vanish. Some creators claimed that their videos were shadow banned, meaning that they would gain views 1 minute and then disappear from search results the next. There was one unquestionable fact that persisted despite the suppression. Albasher had expressed what millions of fans had been feeling for years, that D'Angelo's silence wasn't simply an artist taking a break. The pattern was uncannily familiar. It seemed like every time the truth began to gain traction, something intervened to push it back into the shadows. This story doesn't end with backlash though, because as more people tried to silence Al, more came forward, quietly and anonymously, but consistently confirming bits and pieces of what he said. Some mentioned odd meetings, while others talked about legal battles and dubious contracts. Now the question is not just what happened to D'Angelo, but who wanted him gone, and why Albasher risked everything to expose it. The answer to that may be found in the cryptic messages D'Angelo himself left behind in his lyrics, his interviews, and the eerie symbolism that fans now believe his silent cry for help. What if D'Angelo had been communicating through his art all along? What if his songs were not just soul records, but coded cries for help? As fans started to revisit his albums, odd patterns started to show up. In the years after his disappearance from the spotlight, fans continued to cling to his music, analyzing every lyric and every image for answers. D'Angelo wasn't praising the industry, rather, he was exposing it in songs like Devil's Pie, which talked about the corruption that surrounds success, the cost of celebrity, and the temptation of money. For example, Ain't No Love in the Heart of the City. All of the falsehoods and avarice suddenly sounded more like prophecy than poetry. The tone was darker, more eerie, and full of allusions to treachery, awakening, and spiritual struggle. Even in his later works, when he briefly returned with Black Messiah, D'Angelo seemed to have witnessed something that altered him irrevocably and that he could only convey via his artwork. And those who were paying careful attention started to see that the truth had been concealed. A few admirers also mentioned the music videos, the bleak images, the darkness, the recurrent sense of loneliness. A man caught in his own thoughts despite being surrounded by pandemonium. Was this an artistic statement about imprisonment and control, or was it a mirror of internal conflict? Alb's discoveries are all the more eerie because they are a perfect fit for this image. For years, D'Angelo's music left gaps that his words filled. Albasher had finally given those tunes a voice, as though D'Angelo had attempted to use melody to warn the world. What transpired following Al's live performance, however, may be the most terrifying detail. He was adamant that D'Angelo's narrative was far from ended in spite of the criticism and efforts to quiet him. He made a suggestion that there were others who had witnessed the same darkness and understood the truth. he asserted that some of them were simply too afraid to speak up. And that leads us to the query that fans still ask today. Now, where is D'Angelo? According to some rumors, he is still recording in private, away from the public eye, and working on music that he won't release until he feels comfortable doing so. Some claim that he has no connection to the industry and prefers calm to notoriety. Some others think he's purposefully remaining undercover to shield himself from the people that used to dominate his profession. Regardless of the reality, one thing cannot be denied. For his honesty, the man who gave the world timeless music had to pay a high price. Albasure and D'Angelo's story is about more than just controversy, music, or stardom. The truth is at issue. And what occurs if an artist has the courage to question the structure that created him? It serves as a reminder that there is a person behind every popular song, accolade, and news story, one who frequently bears responsibilities that the general public is unaware of. Albasure may have felt obliged to speak up for that reason, because the powerful are sometimes protected by quiet. However, even a whisper of truth can correct the record. Therefore, it is our responsibility as listeners, fans, and lovers of authentic music to never stop asking questions, to preserve the traditions of artists who sacrificed all for their work, and to never accept simple solutions. Because D'Angelo's narrative isn't a tragedy if Albasure was correct, it serves as a warning, a cautionary tale on the price of authenticity in a society that is based on appearances, a cautionary tale about the consequences of artists who defy authority and the speed at which the industry may stifle those who attempt to rebel. The truth doesn't need a stage, D'Angelo famously remarked. It simply needs a soul to carry it. Perhaps that is why his message is still so powerful even now that he is not here. And we will end it there tonight. Let's continue this discussion before you leave. Please share your opinions in the comments section below. Do you think that Albasure revealed the true cause of D'Angelo's disappearance, or is there more to the tale that we have yet to discover? For more in-depth analysis of the tales the media ignores, please like this video, share it with someone who remembers the real D'Angelo, and subscribe to the channel to determine. Because the truth never goes away in the world of celebrity. Until someone has the courage to bring it back to light, it simply hides.